right. Hello and welcome to the Vegan Luna podcast. I'm here with an incredibly special guest. He's accomplished some amazing things that I don't think very many people in the world can say. He is actually the very first vegan in the world to have climbed Mount Everest, which is simply incredible. I mean, when you think about something like that kind of journey, that kind of accomplishment, I can only imagine the amount of effort, the amount of pain, the amount of training that goes into that, the amount of physical exertion. I mean, I get tired walking up a few flight of stairs, so I can't even imagine climbing the tallest mountain in the world. So that is super incredible. We have an amazing episode right here about someone that has done something that very few in the world can ever say that they've done. So I'm so excited for that and for you guys to get a chance to hear his story and see what he's all about. But before we do that, we have our 5 quick vegan questions. So question number 1, what will it take to get to a vegan world?
What will it take to get to a vegan world?
Yeah, what's it going to take?
Uh,
What do we have to do? What kind of systems need to change? What needs to happen for that to really be true?
I think a lot of awareness and inspiration.
Yeah, so what kind of awareness do you think is needed?
For example, when I went vegan, uh, I had no clue how my food was coming on the table. But the moment I realized how my food was coming to my table, I, I just realized that there's no way that I cannot be a vegan. Vegan is the only way to go forward. So I personally feel awareness through any means, through activism, through podcasts, through social media, through doing crazy physical feats, through doing many things. I think whatever way we can get the message out to people that how your food is coming to the table, and that making that them understand about that, and then telling them that plants are nutritionally amazing, and then they can help you do whatever your dreams in the world are. I think if we can get that message out, that's it. But I think the most primarily, talk to them about animals and talk to them about the suffering of animals. And I'm pretty sure people of the world are very compassionate. They're good human beings at heart, and once they get the idea what's going on, I'm pretty sure they will change, or at least a significant amount of them will change.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. All right. So, question number 2, who is your favorite vegan activist?
Who is my favorite vegan activist? It has to be Gary. I can't
Yurovsky.
pronounce his last. Yes, Yurovsky, because his speech was pretty amazing, and the crazy amount of work that he has done in Israel, in inspiring Israel to become one of the biggest vegan country in the world. And it also has to be Gene Bauer at the Farm Sanctuary, and the amazing work that he has done, and also the amazing vegan athletes of the world who are constantly showing that you can be an elite athlete, you can get elite performance without eating or making the animal suffer.
Yeah, that's great. Those guys are so incredible for sure. All right. So, number 3, what's the most incredible accomplishment ever done by a vegan in your opinion? What do you think is the biggest accomplishment a vegan's done?
I Whenever that comes, two accomplishments come to my mind, mostly from the athlete world. One has to be definitely Patrick Baboumian, lifting 1224 pounds and walking. I mean, it's a Guinness Book of World Records, and it's a crazy record. And the second one that comes to my mind is Scott Jurek breaking the Appalachian Trail record and doing the whole trail in 46 days. I think that's insane. And of course, all Scott's other records of winning Western States Ultra 7 times, which I think no one in the world has done, or winning Hard Rock so many times. It's mostly many achievements in the plant-based world. So they are amazing people.
Yeah,
The athlete.
those are both like it's just mind-boggling um records that those two have held, and they just are so inspiring. So I definitely agree. All right, so um number 4, is there anything a vegan can't do? Like, is there just something that they're physically unable to do? Is there anything?
Absolutely no. Vegans can do everything without hesitation. I was 110 kilos in 2009, and by just going whole foods, plant based, training really hard. Look, I come from a community where people, just as you said, people don't even take stairs for one floor. They take a lift for one floor or an elevator for one floor. So I come from a community that has never climbed a mountain in their life. Hundreds of years of my ascent of people from my community have never climbed a mountain, and here I am, someone who turned around my life and went and climbed Mount Everest not just once but twice. So so it's everything is possible on a vegan diet and a vegan lifestyle.
Yeah,
Everything else
incredible.
is excuses, as simple as that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so what is the biggest myth about veganism? What's the biggest myth for you?
The biggest myth for me turned out to be two things. Turned out to be The first thing was when I decided to climb Mount Everest. Just like any smart guy, I went on Google and I typed how to climb Mount Everest as a vegan. Has it ever happened to you that Google has shown up zero results for anything that you have searched? Rarely happens in the world, and for me, it happened. So, and then going and talking to the mountaineering community, everyone telling me that, hey, you have to eat meat, you have to eat eggs, you have to eat beef jerky, you have to eat, this chocolate, you have to eat this cheese. And I'm like, you know what, I'm not doing any of that, and I'm going to climb Mount Everest. So that was one of the biggest myths. But other than that, it's general constant questioning even till today after I've done Everest twice, that where do I get my protein from? And I'm like just so fed up of that question sometimes, so frustrated. But then I know that as a vegan, I owe it to the animals that I answer that question in a very patient and a very scientific and a very clear way. That really on a vegan diet, you can easily get your protein requirements met. You can easily build muscle, you can easily build endurance without even thinking a lot about it, and achieve the biggest dreams of your life. So yeah, that those two are the biggest myths that sort of I have constantly faced.
Yeah, for sure. The protein one is obviously big, and the movie The Game Changers. If you haven't seen The Game Changers, anyone
I have.
listening, sorry, anyone listening, uh, you definitely have to watch that one. It really dispels a lot of the myths, because that's what they are, as myths. A myth is something that isn't true, that general consensus believed to be true. And so you definitely need to watch that. But the endurance one I think is very interesting, because it really makes sense, on the endurance side of things, and climbing a mountain, is, I imagine it has to be all about endurance.
It is all about.
How much can you endure, right? and
Right.
and so it really makes clear sense, because if you're taking the saturated fats and the cholesterols, and they aren't in your veins and they aren't in your bloodstream, right, then
Right.
that means that your lining of your veins, right, is going to expand even
Right.
further, which means that you can get more oxygen to the parts of your body that you need it the most, whether it's your legs or your brain or your heart, or all the parts that need oxygen. It's going to get there faster and more
Faster.
efficiently, which equals endurance. Like,
Right.
that, like, it's endurance is all about how quickly can you recover. And every single vegan that you talk to, or athlete, they say, I can recover faster. I'm not necessarily like vegan equals better athlete necessarily, but it 100% equals better recovery. And an athlete that can recover better is going to be an athlete that can perform better. So to me, it's pretty simple, when it comes to that. I mean, in my opinion, um,
but
and
but also, just to bring you add more to that point, climbing mountains is most definitely about physical endurance, but it's so much more about mental endurance. And to me, knowing that as a vegan, no animal has to suffer or die, that gives me so much of a mental edge over everyone else. That's how I see it, that I can go to sleep peacefully, that I can constantly focus on my climb, and that every time I'm down and out, I always think about the suffering that animals go through. And that helps me, constantly say, no, I'm doing this for the animals and I'm going to go push it. So, that level of mental endurance that I get from just being a vegan and a clear mind and a lighter body, I think that's what does it for me more than the physical endurance part or the recovery part. That is all there, but it is the mental endurance that comes from being a vegan, which no one really thinks about so much.
Yeah, that's totally true. And you're right, you do have an edge because maybe someone that's climbing Mount Everest, they might be doing it for them. Like, oh, what kind of notoriety, what kind of publicity am I gonna get? What kind of connection with people am I gonna get? Who's gonna be proud of me when I make
Right.
this accomplishment? But you're not about that. You're about proving this for others. You're fighting for someone else, and oftentimes when you're fighting for someone else, you fight harder. Most of the
Yeah,
time. All right,
absolutely.
so great job. Love it. A great job going through the quick vegan questions.
The active ingredient in Roundup is called glyphosate.
They've found glyphosate in wine, breast milk, urine, and drinking water, eggs, oatmeal, bread.
There is an increasing body of evidence. Levels of glyphosate exposure, given enough time, can result in potentially serious disease.
Glyphosate is the most popular weed killer in the world. Glyphosate may pose heightened cancer risk. Last year, the World Health Organization's Cancer Research Agency classified glyphosate as a probable carcinogen.
Preclinical trials showed a 74% reduction of glyphosate in just 6 weeks, as well as reducing the C-reactive protein by 75%, receiving the gold seal of approval by the Detox Project as the world's first glyphosate solution.
So now what I want to ask you is, who are we talking to? Who is this person? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, of course, my name is Kuntal Joisher. Professionally, I am a software engineer. My passion lies in climbing mountains, but everything about me is driven through only one thing, which is veganism. 17 years ago, I went vegan, and that was a single most decision that changed the direction of my entire life. And that's what defines me. So I always like to tell everyone that I'm an engineer by profession, a mountaineer by passion, and a vegan by compassion. That's who I am at heart.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the way that you say that. It just kind of rolls off the tongue, and it sounds so nice, and it really, I think, is a great introduction. And I think that it really will, I'm sure it resonates with so many people, and connects with so many people. So you say 17 years ago, that's pretty amazing. I'm sure 17 years ago was a time where there wasn't any Beyond Meat burgers, and there wasn't vegan cheese, and there wasn't all these substitutes, that we see in today's age. There wasn't so many options. There wasn't all these restaurants that we see popping up every single day. The idea and the belief must have been so much more radical and not as normalized as it is today. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to veganism, and why would you decide to make that choice?
See, I've always been a vegetarian all my life because I was born in a vegetarian family. So growing up, I always believed that animals are sentient and emotional beings, and that each of them have an individual character, and that all these animals want to live as happily as we do. They want to love, they want to feel, they want to do everything that we do. I'm talking more from an emotional and a feelings perspective. I'm not saying that animals want to go and vote. I'm pretty sure if they go and vote, Trump would not be the president of United States. They would, definitely choose better than us humans.
Yeah, they
Um,
might do a little bit better. Yeah, maybe.
but all that said, I always thought that they have this that they are these emotional and sentient beings, and to me, it was always a compassionate choice that I did not want to eat animals, and that's how my life went. Then I shifted to United States to pursue my master's degree, and that's where one of my friends started pointing out to a lot of inconsistencies in my lifestyle. Like I would go and eat a chocolate with eggs inside them, I would eat a cake with eggs inside them, I would wear a leather belt, and I would wear a woolen sweater, uh, or none of these things really. I didn't do anything about these things because I had no idea that these things were causing harm to an animal. So these friends started pointing out to these inconsistencies, and I asked the question, "What's the problem with these things?" So the friends started sharing with me a lot of information about the cruelty in the meat, the dairy, and the leather industry. And once I had done all my research, I connected the dots that, frankly speaking, a piece of meat, a glass of milk, a block of cheese, or that leather belt or the woolen sweater that I was wearing are all the same and come from abused and exploited animals. At that point, as a vegetarian, I was not able to reconcile with my compassionate living or with my compassionate thoughts, but actually my lifestyle was a very cruel lifestyle. So it was like I was not walking the talk, and I had to take a stand. And there were two ways to go forward: that either I could use apathy, and say that I'm ignorant and that I'm happy with my ignorance. Sometimes they say ignorance is bliss. And then there was another way, saying that I can take a stand, I can stand up for the animals, I can stand up for their rights. And the only way to do that was, actually the bare minimum way to do that, was to go vegan. So this was the first time in my life as a 22-year-old that I decided to take a stand for something, to take a stand for someone. And that's what actually changed my life. That's the moment I went vegan. I cold tofu'd, like, that very night. When I decided I was going to go vegan, I went vegan. I figured out everything in my house that was not vegan. I gathered everything. I could have still continued using it because I'd already bought it, but I did not want to take that approach. So I took everything. There were a whole bunch of homeless people living around me. I said, "Hey guys, look, this is all really good stuff. You can use it." And most of it was taken away. So someone was going to use it, so it didn't go wasted. And that's the day I turned vegan. And as I said, that every single moment that I've looked back in hindsight, it was the biggest and the best decision that I have made in my entire life. And standing up for animals helped me stand up and fix a lot of other shitty issues in my life. Look, I'm sometimes you're just ignorant. So things like sexism, things like homophobia, things like many racism are there in your life, but you really have never thought about them, just because the kind of environment that you have been brought up in. Um, uh, Not even the kind of environment, you just think, sometimes you never think about those things. Like in India, there's so much patriarchy, so you are bringing constantly being brought up in a patriarchal society, so you really never think about equality in the gender. Or then homophobia is so, I mean, there's so much taboo around homosexuality. So you have really never thought about these issues. But once I started thinking about animals, I started thinking about every such other issue in my life, and I was able to come to the same conclusion that I came to with animal rights. And so today, uh, I call myself an LGBTQ ally. Uh, uh, there's practically, I have, gotten patriarchy and sexism out of my life. I have gotten out racism out of life. I've gotten out casteism out of my life. So I just feel that veganism helped me become a better human being in general, which is what I would like to tell your audience, that taking a stand for something is really really going to help you fix a lot of other issues in your life. I'm not saying that just by eating broccoli you are going to become a better person. No, you will become a better person by just eating broccoli, but I think in a longer run you will be able to think through a lot of other issues in your life, deal with it, and at the end of the day gain immense amount of mental peace, and happiness, and positivity, which I think is very important and makes you a good human being.
Yeah, I definitely agree for sure. Where can you tell us a little bit about where you came from, and maybe a little bit in your childhood? How was that like?
Uh, I've been born and brought up in a very typical Indian conservative family, uh, from an mostly brought up in Mumbai, in the Western India. But to just give you a sense, even though I say conservative family, compared to most of the conservative families that I see across India, my family was very progressive. So at least they taught me things like compassion, or to a very large extent in my family, there's not much issues with patriarchy or in terms of gender inequality. So those things don't exist much in my family. But then when I see around in India, uh, like how there is so much female infanticide, where the female is just killed in the womb of a mother, or they get aborted once they have found out that there's a female who's going to take birth, which has also led the government to ban sonography of general sonography to find the gender of a child. But okay, I don't want to digress from the issue, but just around there were so many issues that I was constantly seeing, and they sometimes tend to influence you, or sometimes they tend to stay in your subconscious. And those are the issues that I was able to deal with once I came to Los Angeles, and once I turned vegan, and once I had that independent and an open-minded thinking about everything in life, uh, where I went a lot more progressive, and I was able to, as I said, accept so many things in life, so many things around me, and today
Yeah.
that has made me a better person.
For sure, that's awesome. Yeah, I in Kuwait, where I am right now, I interact and I work with a lot of people from India, and one of the and I've learned so much about the Indian culture, and it's so fascinating. Obviously, you know what it's like being in California. You don't learn about Indian culture in California. So
Indeed,
you
indeed.
you need to be around the people to understand it. Of course, being immersed into India would be get you a better understanding. But I've learned a lot since I've been here. I mean, I never even ate Indian food until I came to Kuwait, and now I love Indian food. And so that's just one example. But I've worked with a lot of them, and I've worked with a lot that are also vegetarian. And and what I find with the vegetarians, first I make a small joke sometimes. When they eat like something like cheese or whatever, I say, I don't think cheese is a vegetable. Aren't you supposed to be eating vegetables, right?
Right, right.
And stuff like that, just like little jokes. But on the serious note, on the serious side, when I communicate with the ones that are vegetarian, and I talk about animals and animal rights, and I talk about what happens in the dairy industry, and I talk about what happens to the mother cow and the baby cows, and how they feel, and how they go through their life, and how they suffer for the milk and the cheese that you eat. There's a big disconnect. And one of the things that I hear the most common thing that I hear when I speak about this is, oh, well, in my country, it doesn't happen like that. Oh, in my village, it doesn't happen like that. In my village, we have a cow, and we treat the cow like a family, and we take care of that cow, and we drink from the cow, right? And I hear that all the time. And one of the biggest things that I say about that, I say, well, even if that's true, or that's great that that's true, and that's great that that's better, right? For sure, that's better. But the milk you're drinking right now doesn't come from that cow, and the cheese that you're eating right now doesn't come from that place. So how can you justify what you're eating right now if you love animals? What do you say to that? Only because I know that I'm gonna have some people listening that might be in that place. So can you touch about that a little bit?
Right. So I think a lot of this comes from social and religious conditioning of many, many, many decades or possibly even centuries, where cow is considered the mother of all Hindus. Uh, uh, and so specifically, even our gods eating butter, our gods eating, drinking milk, constantly. When I went vegan, and I would tell people that, hey, you should really consider going vegan, one of the first things that I constantly get is, but our god has said that we can eat butter, we can eat cheese, what's the not cheese, but we can eat butter, we can eat drink milk and all of those things. So just as you said, I tell them about the conditions of cows in India, that it's now become an industry. India has 1.4 billion people. Okay, if everyone even just drinks 200 ml of milk a day, that level of milk can act, it's like the amount of milk required by half our entire earth. Okay, so anyone say, you simply cannot produce that amount of milk by rearing the cows in a really open area where they are mating naturally, and when they are first giving the milk to their babies, and then whatever is left is taken by human beings. Simply doesn't happen. So the whole concept of humane milk, the whole concept of happy cows, it is absolutely a myth. You were asking me about myths. A humane cow, humane milk, happy cow, these are all the biggest myths. I have even gone to a village and I have seen how the cow industry works there. Even in some of the best villages where they take care of their cows in the best possible fashion, they artificially inseminate the cows. The big one of the questions that I ask everyone who's drinking milk or who thinks that they are compassionate people is, just put yourself or one of your family members in place of that cow, and ask yourself the question whether you would want that to happen to your family member. Would you want your family member to be raped, to be grown, to be injected with crazy amount of antibiotics, then sucked on their breasts so that milk can come out and that you can drink that milk? Just put yourself in that place, and if your answer is no, then you should simply not be doing that to any other mammal on this planet. uh, that's the way I talk to them. But frankly speaking, the conditioning is so strong that they simply do not see it that way. They think that humans and animals are different, that animals are here on this planet not with us but for us. So they think that animals are here, have been put here by the god to be used by us. That's how their thinking is. So my goal always has been, I don't indulge in a lot of debates and a lot of activism in this fashion. But what I do is I go and achieve crazy physical feats, and I want them to come and ask me the question, boss, what do you eat, man? Tell us, what do you eat? Because most people think that the crazy feats that you achieve is directly connected to the nutrition that you put in your body. And when someone asks me the question and I answer them, it's a much better way of me telling them constantly that go vegan, go vegan, go vegan. So that's the sort of way I talk to them.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that and the way that you explain it, because it's one of the most frustrating things for me personally is someone that loves animals, um, and doesn't eat them, and but they still pay for the suffering in the other industries like dairy and eggs. It's can be
It's
one
not
of the
even
most
suffering, right?
frustrating.
It's still slaughter. I
Yeah.
personally think that dairy industry is actually worse than meat industry. In the meat industry, you're just going to slaughter the cow, her suffering is finished. Here you are going to grow the cow, you're going to separate the baby from the cow, you are going to inject it, use it, rape it for the next 5, 8, 10 years. Then once it's completely useless to your profits, you're going to slaughter it. That's enormous amounts of suffering that you are, and finally slaughter. So I think that milk not that I want to compare the suffering between any two non-vegan items, but I personally think that milk is far worse than beef or meat or any other thing. Milk is like the most cruel industry on this planet, and most of the vegetarians don't understand that. So, so my hope is that they become aware of that, and I'm pretty sure if they are truly aware of this thing, that they will give up milk and that they will consider veganism.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So I want to talk a little bit more about what do you do yourself to stand up for animals? How do you fight for them? What are some of the things that you do?
So 17 years ago, when I turned vegan, uh, right away I knew that one thing that I want to do is I want to turn the world into vegan, because I thought the amount of peace that I got uh, from knowing that no animals have to suffer or die for us. I thought everyone should get that level of peace and clarity of mind. Uh, so I started figuring out of all ways that I could try and convince people to go vegan. For example, if there would be a product launch party at my work, I would most definitely sign up for that party, even if it was at one of the worst non-vegan restaurants in the town. I would go to the restaurant and I would not order anything, because of course there was nothing for me to order on the menu. And then people's eyes would go to me, hey, this guy's not ordered anything. And they would ask me the question, why are you not ordering anything? And that would be a way to make veganism the focal point of the discussion. And I did that quite often in friends, in family, at workplaces, and everywhere. That was my initial start of activism around veganism. But I quickly realized that people started avoiding me. People were actually not going vegan at all. They were actually getting turned off by me. I quickly started losing friends. I quickly started family avoiding me, at workplace people avoiding me. uh, and I was getting frustrated in term time. I also started getting negative that no one is get going vegan, that people are so stupid, people are not turning vegan. So it just lot of as vegan I wanted to be positive and I was going negative. And at that point I decided that I'm going to take a break from my activism, and that I'm just going to focus on my personal veganism. And then as years went by, I came back to Mumbai to take care of my father. And then by chance I realized that the biggest dream of my life is climbing Mount Everest. And when I found out my biggest dream, one of the things I told myself was that I was going to climb Everest as a vegan or not going to climb at all. And then I went on this mountaineering journey. uh, and I realized that suddenly, in 2 or 3 years into my journey, as I started writing about my journey, talking about my journey, a lot of people started reaching out to me and asking me, hey, how do you fuel yourself? Hey, what do you eat? Hey, what do you wear? Hey, what do you do? Hey, how are you doing these crazy things? We saw you being this unhealthy 110-kilo guy, and suddenly now you have transformed yourself. And that's when I realized that maybe this is when I start my activism again. Maybe not in the way that I used to before, but something that has given me so much in life, a cause that changed my entire life. It is now time to give back to the cause. But more than that, stand up for the animals, try and save as many animal lives as possible. And so in last few years, I have found my way of activism, and that way is through inspiration. Uh, my clear cut goal is to go and climb big mountains, climb them in 100% vegan way. That is 100% vegan clothing and 100% vegan food, without usage of animals in any fashion. And do these crazy things to a point where people come and ask me the question, what do you eat? How do you fuel? What do you do? Just tell us your secret. And that's my way of getting into their life. That is number one. And number two is I also proactively write about all these things on my social media all the time. uh, I have a very big social media following. uh, Big is of course a very relative term. So but pretty significant social media following, to a point where I constantly write about why I went vegan, or uh, issues around animal rights, or issues around animal liberation. So I constantly write about those things. Uh, and one of the, you had mentioned in the very beginning that a lot of people climb for publicity, name, and fame. And I'm going to make a very shocking statement here. I also climb for publicity a lot. Okay. And I will tell you why. Uh, to me, every time I climb a big mountain, uh, and people call me the first vegan in the world, and people call me a lot of things, the good thing about that is that a lot of people want to write about me. A lot of publications want to write about me. And that is a great thing, because that allows me to talk about veganism. And one of my, not one, but possibly the only condition I have with a journalist when they want to write about me is that they have to write the word vegan in the headline, and that they have to write about my veganism in their content. If they don't do it, then I will never talk to them again. I don't really care about what publication they are writing for. So the reason I climb for publicity is because I really need the publicity for veganism. I need the publicity for animal rights. I need the publicity for animal liberation. Because the more awareness, the more publicity there is, the more animal lives we'll save. That's how I think about it. So it's not publicity for myself, but it's publicity always for the animals. So my concept is focus on the message, not on the messenger. There will always be multiple messengers throughout this movement, and we have to constantly stay focused on the message, which is animal liberation and animal rights. So yeah, that's the sort of activism that I do, which is mostly through my climbs. Where, as you all another angle to this is, as I said to you before, that when I decided to climb Everest, everyone told me that as a vegan you will not be able to climb Mount Everest. And that's a big problem, because they thought that vegan diet lacks protein, vegan diet lacks nutrition, and vegan diet is simply not comparable to the non-vegan diet. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to do through my climb was dispel this myth that vegans cannot climb Everest, or vegans cannot do these big physical feats. Uh, and this is also one of my active ways of activism. When I climbed Everest in 2016, the first time, uh, I was climbing on a plant-based diet. And I say it a plant-based diet because I was wearing a down suit on my body. And to just tell your audience, a down suit is constructed in a way to withstand temperatures of almost minus 50 degrees Celsius and keep a climber warm and safe on the mountain. At the same time, a down suit is also made from the feathers of a slaughtered geese. Many geese are slaughtered in an incredibly inhumane, again, as I said, there's nothing humane, but in such a cruel fashion. And I had tried writing to many people, or many manufacturers across the world, asking them to make a vegan suit. But everyone said that a vegan suit, or a suit without down, is simply impossible for an 8,000-meter mountain. So after all this search, I sort of, in I had that moment of lapse where I gave up. I compromised, wore a dead animal on my body, went on the top of Mount Everest, dispelled the myth that these feats cannot be achieved on a vegan diet. uh, but when I came home, I felt guilty. uh, and I knew that in my subconscious, every time I stood on a stage to tell my story, and people would announce me that I'm the first vegan in the world to climb Everest, I knew that I was not. Because if I had to be the first vegan in the world to climb Everest, I had to be eating vegan food, wearing vegan clothing, and not exploit animals in any way. But I did contribute to animal exploitation and cruelty. So, so finally, I persevered. I found out a company called Save the Duck that helped me build the first vegan suit of the planet. It took us 8 months of research and development, and finally that suit was ready. I was nervous because I would be testing the suit on myself. The suit had never been tested before. So I'd be putting my life at risk. I would be putting my body at risk. I would be putting my fingers at risk. But frankly speaking, I was ready more than ever for the animals. I went and climbed a smaller mountain. tested the suit on myself. I reached the top without a scratch, came back down without a scratch, no illnesses, no frostbite, not even a cough. And at that point, I knew that I was ready to climb Everest. And finally, this year, 2019, May 23rd, I stood on the top of Mount Everest without wearing or eating animals and actually achieving the biggest dream of my life, which was a 100% vegan ascent of Mount Everest. Um Sitting here, I can tell you in the hindsight that 2016 Everest climb, even though sure it was myth breaking, it was groundbreaking in many ways because no vegan had done it. So it was groundbreaking in many ways, but I consider it to be one of the biggest failures of my life, because I didn't try hard when I should have. I should have tried harder for the animals. I should have persevered harder for the animals, and I should have done it in a 100% vegan fashion. But look, all of us make mistakes during our journeys. I made a mistake, uh, but now that I have the vegan suit, I have many other vegan clothing items. My hope is that I can take that message out and hope that no other human being ever climbs Everest uh, by wearing a down suit or by exploiting or eating animals. So that's or that, for that matter, any other big mountain, or for that matter, any other mountain, or for that matter, any other physical fitness feat without eating, wearing, or exploiting animals.
Yeah, that's just incredible. I mean, hearing that story, I mean, it's very inspirational, and I can tell how you can use that as a tool, not only for yourself in your own life, but also for the animals, and how that can be highly effective. It's truly amazing, and you inspired me. I really want to go climb Mount Everest right now, but I don't think I'm ready yet. Um, but yeah, I think that is just incredible. I don't even know if I don't even know if people understand like what does it take to do something like that? Like how challenging is it? Like what are some of the risk and dangers of doing something like this?
So just to give you a sense, first of all, Mount Everest is at 29,000 feet. The next time you take a flight and the flight is at cruise altitude and you look out the window, that's the height that I've reached to physically. When you see the screen on your plane, it says minus 50 F. That's the temperature on top of Everest most of the times. Uh, but to give you a sense, if I take you right now and put you on top of Mount Everest, you will die within 5 minutes. There's simply not enough air pressure on the top, consequently, lesser oxygen available on the top, which means that all your organs will fail. You will have a massive heart attack, you will die. More than 300 plus people have died climbing Everest in last few years or last 75 years, but thousands of people have gotten injured climbing Everest. They have lost their fingers, they have lost their toes, they have gotten lung infections. There was this guy who on my first 8,000-meter climb had to be rescued. He had a acute case of hypoxia and hypothermia. Hypoxia means lack of oxygen to your brain, and hypothermia means your body core temperature is so low that it's completely getting cold. It was such a bad case that he was removing his jackets, he was removing his mittens. He almost felt as if he was sitting on a beach. Here he's going to die. He's in minus 30 degrees Celsius, yet he's removing his clothes. I have seen crazy cases. Uh, it's simply the terrain or the height is simply not built for human beings to survive at that altitude. It takes 65 days to climb Mount Everest. Uh, some of the days are really tough. At 26,000 feet, which is the death zone, uh, 26,000 feet and above is known as the death zone. Uh, Two things: human bodies cannot survive at that altitude without oxygen, of course, but even with oxygen, you are constantly on borrowed time. Every second that you spend inside the death zone, you are closer to your death. Just making water inside the death zone, you have to dig ice, you have to start a burner, you have to melt the ice, convert it into water, make it boiling water. it could easily take you 35 to 40 minutes to just make 1 liter of water. That's the kind of hostile environment that you are inside. And when your brain is not working at all, you have to climb some of the most treacherous terrain on the planet. One mistake would mean your death. At 28,500 feet, even if you just twist your ankle, you are a dead body. If you cannot walk on your own, there is simply no rescue at 28,500 feet. You will die there. You will lie there forever and ever. Your body preserved to a point where even if 100 years later someone finds your body, your muscle is going to be intact on the body. That's what Mount Everest is. I would not say it's one of the toughest mountains in the world, but it's most definitely the highest mountains in the world and one of the toughest physical feats that a human can achieve. And and going for and for me personally, first of all, I'm an Indian. I come from a community that has never climbed a mountain in their life, which means I have simply no genetic gift like most people in Europe or United States would have, who are who have been exposed to the outdoors since a very very long time, who have that in their culture. We don't have that in our culture. And for someone who went from being 110 kilos unhealthy software engineer to a person who created a top of the world body and mind and finally went and climbed Mount Everest. So that's the kind of journey I'm talking about.
Wow, that's powerful. You remind me of someone named Fiona Oakes. Are you familiar with her?
Yes, she's
Yeah.
one of the biggest inspirations of my life.
Have you seen her
The
movie Running for Good?
No, no, I am supposed to do a screening of Running for Good in Mumbai, and I met the director Keegan when he was here in Mumbai. Amazing guy with an amazing vision. But more about Fiona, the kind of work that she does for the animals, it's super inspiring. Of course, her marathon feats are super inspiring, running in on all the 7 continents and doing some of the craziest things in the running world. But what inspires me more is her lifestyle and the commitment to the animal liberation and the rights cause. And that inspires me to do the same or match up to Fiona. Sometimes I think even if I can like be 10% of what Fiona does, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, she's incredible. The movie Running for Good is amazing. And I'm excited for when you get a chance to see that. It's just so inspirational. And she goes through some of the toughest terrains and the toughest runs in the world. And it really reminds me of a lot of what you've accomplished. And to be honest, I mean, you guys are really similar right now. If you're hoping to hit 10%, I mean, I think you for sure surpassed that by a long shot in my book. And also, I think that the people that will watch that will really be inspired as well. I think they'll
Which is why I
definitely
want to do a
enjoy
proper
that.
screening. Like I want to get a
Yeah.
theater. I want to. Keegan has already said that he will give us the rights to do the screening. So we want to get a really nice theater. Get out the running community of Mumbai. Get out the fitness community of Mumbai. Just get out everyone, anyone. Fill the theater. Show them what Fiona has done. Show them what can be done on a vegan diet. Show them that you can do so much for the animals and just make get them inspired to do the same.
So why didn't Keegan make a movie about you yet? Is that coming soon?
uh, as I said that I do not think that I am at the level of Fiona, nowhere close to the level of Fiona, and hopefully someday when I have achieved many feats and more than the feats have done much more for the animals, maybe have my own farm sanctuary or maybe do something where I'm ground hands on doing something for the animals every single day, every single moment of my life. Maybe at that point uh, maybe at that point someone can do a movie on me, and that would be fine. But right now I've simply not done enough to warrant a movie about me. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to reach out to Keegan and I'm going to tell him that he needs to make a movie about you.
Okay. Okay.
And we'll see what he says.
Okay, sounds good.
because I want to see it. I want to see it. It sounds it would be amazing. Yeah. So, what would you say is the biggest mountain or the most challenging mountain that you've ever climbed? What's the most challenging? Is it Everest or is there another one?
It has to be Everest from this year. And let me tell you, the challenge was not around the vegan side. Most people think that climbing Everest as a vegan was more challenging. Let me tell you that climbing Everest as a vegan was no different than climbing Everest as a non-vegan. I have to categorically say that and dispel that myth that I had a challenge in terms of vegan food. There was surely challenge in terms of vegan gear, but that challenge was also because it was never been done before. Now that that challenge has been solved, I'm pretty sure going forward people will not have that challenge anymore. uh, the challenge this year was the terrain was extremely tricky. I still remember reaching 27,200 feet, camp 3. uh, this is the highest campsite anywhere on our planet earth. And at 9:30 in the night, Mingma Tenji Sherpa, my mentor and my guide, both of us started taking the final steps to reach the summit of Mount Everest. We went on our final journey. And for the next 4 hours, as we climbed through the dark, I passed by dead bodies of about 5 climbers. And these were well preserved, but they were like a stark reminder that if I made any mistake, I would be there. But like the first dead body that I saw, his head was almost like turned, his leg was in a different direction, his hand was in a different direction. It's almost as if this guy had taken a fall from somewhere and his body was like smashed. So, and over a period of years, as his body became frozen, it kept falling down and it kept, tossing and turning. So it was like a little shock. And this year has been one of the worst years in terms of weather. Last 20 years Everest has not seen this kind of weather, which also led to a lot of traffic jam on the Nepal side with so many people dying. This was like a big topic this year on the in the Western media, but I was climbing from a different side, so I didn't have that traffic jam or any of those issues. But because of difficult weather, the terrain on the mountain was extremely difficult. It was a lot of mix of ice and rock rather than the snow that we would see. And snow makes the climb a little easier, but due to lack of snow and more ice and rock, the climb became extremely technical. Imagine climbing seriously technical pitches at 29,000 feet, where a brain is practically only working 30% of what it's working at the sea level. That's what made it extremely difficult. The climb lower down the mountain was pretty straightforward, but the last 2 or 3 days, I was always on a thin line between life and death. And this is not something that I have experienced even on Everest in 2016 or any other mountain in my life. So it was something that demanded 500% of my focus and my energy in just staying alive. And and just on that point, every time I go through that suffering, I'm putting myself through that suffering. I have a choice. But billions of animals across the world who are in slaughterhouses, who are in dairy houses, they go through far more suffering than this, and they don't even have that choice. We deny them that choice all the time. So every time I'm in that situation, I think of a cow that is being taken to the slaughterhouse, and that how it does not have that choice and how its suffering is so much. And I think that, dude, my suffering is nothing. Let's keep climbing. Let's make it to the top. Let's get back down and talk about that cow, not about myself. So yeah, that's what keeps driving me on in these conditions.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, so sad to hear, the ones that have passed away and lost their lives, but also so almost like it's like, how do you go forward, when you see that? It is a shock. That's so powerful. So I want to leave with one last thing before we wrap this up. Is there
Yes.
anything that you really want to share that maybe we didn't talk about? Or is there something that maybe we talked about that you don't want anyone to forget, like one big thing?
Uh, I do want to talk about something different. In my first attempt of climbing Mount Everest, I went in 2014 and I went back in 2015. And both times I failed due to certain natural disasters. Specifically in 2015, when there was a big earthquake in Nepal, a 7.9 magnitude earthquake in Nepal. I still remember when I saw the avalanche, uh, I was very sure I was going to die. And to come out of it alive is just a big thing for me, is a privilege, and is a gift. And every single day I live it as if there's no tomorrow. So I live every single day fully, to my fullest. But more than that, I persevered and I went back in 2016 and I reached the top. So I want to share this message with your audience that every journey that you go on, every big dream that you want to achieve, every Everest that you want to climb, there are going to be a lot of failures, a lot of obstacles in the way. The important thing is to learn from the failures, to overcome the obstacles, keep putting one foot in front of another, and all of you folks will make it to the top of your dreams. And the most important thing to remember is that there has to be a cause or something that drives your journey. Um, and especially for all the fence sitting vegans or all the aspiring vegans, I truly think that every time you have this initial portion of your journey, every time you think that, hey, maybe I can eat that burger, or hey, maybe I can eat that cheese, uh, sure, go ahead, do those things. Don't beat up yourself over it. But at the same time, also remember why you are doing this in first place. I personally think that if you are committed to the vegan cause, committed to the animal liberation cause, committed to the animal rights cause, then those thoughts will never come in your mind in the first place. So if you have the cause right in place, then your journey will be very, very easy. It will be very, very smooth, and you will be able to contribute and be a very, very strong vegan and a good human being, a compassionate human being. So that's my message.
Yeah, thank you so much. You are truly an inspiration to many people. I can't wait for people to hear this and get a chance to see this. This is going to be available on, of course, all my social media platforms. Real quick, before we go, where can people find you if they really want to follow your journey? They want to see what you're doing. They want to see the next mountain that you climb. They want to
Climbing.
learn
Yeah.
more from you. Where can people find you? What's the best way, or what are some of the ways?
Uh, Two of the best ways to reach out to me are on my Instagram and my Facebook. You can find me Kuntal Joisher. If you're confused, you can go on Google and just possibly type vegan on Everest or something if you forget or whatever. Or there's my website, which is www.kuntaljoisher.com. But Instagram and Facebook is where I am very active. I constantly blog about or talk about my climbs. And if you want to reach out, you can always reach out to me on Instagram direct message and even Facebook Messenger. I almost always reply to all the messages. And if you are a vegan and if you send me a friend request, I will also accept the friend request. But if you are a non-vegan, I will not accept your friend request because I have very limited friend requests. So I only accept requests from vegans.
Yeah, for sure. I understand. I'm at like 4,800 or something like that. I'm like, I don't have any more room. Like I
Yeah,
just, 5,000 is the limit. Like I'm
yeah,
running out of
yeah.
room. So yeah, I get it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Thank you for taking the time. And thank you for continuing to fight the good fight. And I know that we will accomplish our goals. I know that we will get to total animal liberation because not because we want it, because we just have to. You know,
Yes,
we just have to. The animals can't continue going through this suffering any longer. We owe it to them. There's no reason why we're doing this, especially if we're gonna be happy and healthy and accomplish amazing feats. There's no reason, so we got to end it, put it to end.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right, well, take care. I'll be talking to you soon, and have the great rest of your day.
Thank you. Wish you the same, and really awesome stuff that you're doing with the podcast. So wish you all the luck that you can get your podcast, do pretty amazing stuff, and contribute to the cause.
Yep. That's the plan. Thank you.